Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7 tenths remaining. Conley now with 3. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. We have some NBA and Grizzlies news items for today's show. Turns out there will be no guest this week, but I've got Brevin Knight lined up to come on the show next week, so that should be a lot of fun. There's some Grizzlies stuff to talk about. First, the team made an announcement about Desmond Bane undergoing a medical procedure. Jaren Jackson Jr. was announced as a finalist for the NBA's Social Justice Award. And on Tuesday night, the NBA draft lottery happened. That doesn't really affect the Grizzlies. But Adam Silver was on the broadcast and made some comments about Ja Morant. And oh yeah, Ja Morant issued an apology on Tuesday night. So we're going to go over all of that stuff on this show. We can start with the good news, which is Jaren Jackson Jr. being named a finalist for the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Social Justice Award. He's one of 5 finalists, along with Steph Curry, Trey Jones, Chris Paul, and Grant Williams. This is the 3rd year of the award. Last season, Reggie Bullock won it. From the press release, they say that Jaren Jackson Jr. focuses his pursuit of social justice on issues related to educational and economic opportunity, as well as civic engagement and women's empowerment. It highlights a lot of the good stuff he has done in the last season, working with local schools in Memphis, helping out the teachers, giving them school supplies, thanking them personally, taking them to the University of Memphis women's basketball games. He contributed money to pay power and utility and housing bills in Memphis. He donated $50,000 through his Much Required campaign to help support local youth serving nonprofits. He also had a PSA about informing eligible voters to go out and vote and get involved civically. So all that good stuff is a nice counterbalance to a lot of the other Grizzlies news of the day. Those bad headlines, Jaren Jackson Jr. getting honored by the NBA as a finalist for this award. Next up, the team released a medical update on Desmond Bane, saying he had a procedure done to address the toe fracture, the sesamoid fracture, the injury he had during last season. He's supposed to be fully recovered and healthy for the start of next season. Of course, last year, before the toe injury, he had some unbelievable statistics. He averaged 25, 5, and 5 before the injury, and that's including like the first 3 games of the season where he was really off. The 9 games before he got hurt, he was averaging 28 points per game. Then he missed 17 games with this injury before returning, and it was just something he dealt with over the remainder of the season. After returning from the injury, the final half of the season, he averaged 20.7 points per game on 39% three-point accuracy, which may have been what he was going to come down to anyways. I mean, I don't know if he was going to shoot or average 25, 5, and 5 all season, but it did seem like to us that he was affected by this injury. Like in the 12 games before he got hurt, he shot 45% from 3. Last year, of course, he shot over 43% from 3. After he returned from injury, he only shot 39% from the three-point line. So maybe that toe was a big deal with his performance this season. Even though he was sharp for most of the playoffs, at least it's something he's taken care of. We thought that was going to happen, and the team releases the medical updates saying that that did, in fact, happen. Now we get to the less fun stuff, which is just the Ja Morant story as it continues to grow. Morant released an apology basically in between the third and fourth quarter break of game one of Nuggets-Lakers. Like, this was a news dump in the middle of the game. I don't know if it was directly in response to Adam Silver publicly making comments on ESPN. Maybe would be my guess. Of course, no one's going to take the apologies seriously because we've already been through this. Here's what Ja Morant said, quote, "I know I've disappointed a lot of people who have supported me. This is a journey, and I recognize there is more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself." Now, this has been a hot topic among all NBA people, this Ja Morant situation. And since I released the episode on Monday, and I've considered it more and listened to other people and tried to, always consider the opinion of people who I think are wiser than myself, my thoughts aren't that much changed on it. I do think it's an interesting hypothetical to wonder, what would the punishment be for a player who had no history? Like, if someone with no off-the-court issues, with no allegations of violence or threats or impropriety or handling guns in an irresponsible manner had posted a video like this, what would a suspension be? Because, as everyone correctly points out, we don't believe Ja Morant broke any laws. So I don't know. I do think there would be some suspension. This is not like a Second Amendment issue. It doesn't matter if he's on private property. It doesn't matter if there's no alcohol involved. All of those things are better than if they were involved. But, I think a player without any form of history or previous punishment would still probably face some kind of suspension. Because one thing you can say is, all right, Ja didn't do anything wrong. If that's your argument, look at the rest of the NBA. And unless I'm forgetting something or terrible at Googling, other NBA players are not doing this. No one is putting firearms on social media. Like, it just isn't happening. Not even like, if you want to say like, oh, well, some NBA players are hunters. It's okay. Right now, I don't see anyone putting it on social media. As we wonder about the ethics of Ja Morant's actions, I think you have to consider the fact that no other players are doing this. Certainly not stars. I know maybe it's a gun culture. It's even a playful thing. Like, Ja's not holding the gun in a threatening manner, but whatever the reason, we know the NBA is very opposed to their players being associated with guns. They don't want it out there on social media. They want, Adam Silver wants, the owners want, the people with financial stakes in the league, they want the guns as far away from the players as possible, both for marketing, but more importantly for player safety. So with this being a repeat violation for Ja, and what I was kind of theorizing on the show on Monday, I could imagine they laid out a code of conduct for Ja, and he violated it. Now, we don't know that. That hasn't been reported. But the tone that Adam Silver had on the broadcast, I would describe it as grave. I think where at some point I started thinking after my show on Monday, all right, maybe he'll get suspended for like 10 games. Because if you look at the history of NBA suspensions for these type of things, the Gilbert Arenas, Javaris Crittenton thing, those guys had guns on team property and they drew guns at each other in the locker room. That is a far cry from playing with a gun on social media. If you look at other guys who have had gun crimes, where they pled guilty to gun crimes, we only talked about 4 games and 7 games in these specific instances. So those aren't very long suspensions, and Ja Morant already faced an 8-game suspension. So the idea that it could be like 20 or 40 games, I was like, that's preposterous based on what precedent has been. And so I was thinking, all right, maybe my guess will be like 10 games or something because of the repeat nature of the violation. This is beyond whatever damage this has done to Ja Morant's brand. Like, Ja doing this again. The thing I can't get over is 2 weeks ago, the Grizzlies season ended about 3 weeks ago, we'll say. 2.5 weeks. And they talked then about the self-made distractions. And Ja Morant says, I did off-the-court stuff that affected the team. I've got to be a better leader. That was less than 3 weeks ago. That makes the video shocking. And that's what Adam Silver called it. He said it was shocking. The way Adam Silver spoke, and this, I guess, backs up what the national NBA writers are saying, like Zach Lowe and Tim McMahon, thinking that it could be a 15 or 20 game suspension. Adam Silver said about the first suspension when they spoke, I guess this would be in March. Silver said, we talked directly about the consequences first. Before we got to, this was actually, the question was about, like, did you give him, it was sort of a question about, hey, like, did you warn him what would happen if there was a repeat violation? So Silver said, quote, before we got to a subsequent potential to have done something wrong, we were very focused on the misconduct that was in front of us at the time. This is, again, at the time of the previous incident. Silver says, quote, most of our conversation was about how incredibly serious the first incident was of waving a firearm on social media. The consequences there, Silver says, an 8-game suspension was pretty serious and something that he's saying Morant seemed to take incredibly seriously at that time. Silver says, quote, we spoke for a long time about not just the consequences that could have on his career, but the safety issues around it. And also the acknowledgement that he's a star. He has an incredibly huge following. These are still Silver's words. And Silver says, my concern, and I thought he shared it with me, that millions, if not tens of millions of kids globally would have seen him do something that was celebrating, in a way, that act of using a firearm in that fashion. So this was all talking about, Silver talking about how seriously he thought Ja Morant took the first instance. And then Silver says, quote, honestly, I was shocked when I saw this weekend that video. Quote, now we're in the process of investigating it and we'll figure out exactly what happened to the best we can. The video is a bit grainy and all that, but I'm assuming the worst. End quote. Adam Silver's tone made me feel like, okay, Ja's going to get suspended for a long time. It's not going to be 10 games. It might be more than that. I mean, maybe will only be 10 games. But the Morant thing, there's no, I don't think there's any hope now that, he didn't break any laws, so maybe he'll be not punished. I do think it's going to be, we're going to talk double-digit games for this suspension. And one aspect of this that I hadn't really considered in my previous episode was just how this affects Ja Morant's ability to make All-NBA next season or be eligible for any end-of-the-season awards. If he gets suspended 15 games, he can only miss 2 games the rest of the season to be eligible for All-NBA. Part of the new CBA, you have to play 65 games to be eligible for end-of-the-season awards. Basically, if the league suspends him 15 games, they're kicking him off All-NBA for next year, too. Because he's going to miss more than 2 games once he finally starts playing. It also has really put the Grizzlies in a tough situation where they have this player they care for and they want the best for, but suddenly you have to ask yourself, like, how far can we go with this guy as our franchise cornerstone if we can't depend on him, if he can't act responsibly? It's a tough situation. I mean, many people have been joking. I mean, maybe joking is the wrong word, but just saying like, hey, you can wave guns or go on Instagram Live. Maybe ideally you wouldn't do either, but you certainly can't do both. Both is why you're facing yet another suspension. Both is why you might put your endorsements at risk if you're Ja Morant. And again, beyond any legality, the Grizzlies certainly said, stop putting firearms on social media. You are our main brand ambassador. You are our biggest star. Stop doing it. The league, Adam Silver, said this behavior is dangerous. It's not appropriate for an NBA star. The NBA markets Ja Morant heavily. He's one of their most viewed athletes across all their social channels. He's a massive star that the league promoted a lot. They put the Grizzlies on national television. What was it, 16 or 17 times this year? He's a massive star, a face of the league. They said, don't put guns on social media. And Ja Morant did. For what? Like, for no reason. Nah, I mean, maybe there isn't a reason to ever do it. But he did it weeks after Ja Morant said he was going to, be a better leader and stop creating off the court distractions. So it's a bad situation that Ja Morant has got himself into, and the commissioner's comments on the draft lottery broadcast make me feel like, all right, maybe my 10-game thought earlier that I had to myself might have shot low. I mean, beyond our hope and our concern and our worry about Ja Morant and our desire for Ja Morant to be healthy and happy and not do these sort of things because of how they negatively affect him and put him possibly in danger, you also have to consider his reputation. Like, people are going to make gun jokes around Ja Morant for the rest of his life because of this behavior, because of just what he considers, I guess, to be fun. Singing songs and pulling guns out while you drive around and putting it on social media. Anyways, the NBA draft lottery happened. I guess it's good for the Grizzlies that there were no miracle jumps for their Western Conference rivals like the Pelicans or the Mavericks. Yeah, Wembanyama coming to the Southwest Division. Maybe not ideal. The Rockets were also in the top 4, but thankfully only 4th. 3 of the top 4 picks go into the West. Makes life maybe a little bit tougher. The Trailblazers get a little boost there, but now the lottery has happened, things will settle in for the offseason. Teams will start hiring their coaches. The Grizzlies will know, maybe which teams they can start trading with or have a better view of what the landscape will look like as they try to upgrade their roster. Of course, we as Grizzlies fans will focus on our 25th pick, start scouting that, seeing who could be a good fit for the Grizzlies. Anyways, Grizzlies season tickets are on sale right now. Season tickets are the best way to guarantee your seats to the biggest matchups at the lowest prices all season long. For more information, visit grizzlies.com or call 901-888-HOOP today. All right, thanks you guys for listening to this episode. Appreciate all the support. If you have any Grizzlies questions that you want me to address or answer on the show, hit me up on Twitter at FastBreakBreak or at Grizzlies Pod. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Grizzlies Pod YouTube channel. Just a couple hundred subscribers away from 1,000. That was the goal for the end of the year. So let's try to get there by draft time. That would be amazing. If you haven't already subscribed, please help me out over there. All right. Hope you guys have a great Wednesday. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.